I lost $168,000 of investor capital over the last 5 years of flipping houses. And in this video, I'm gonna be talking about my biggest lessons that I've learned through these years and how you can implement it too. In this video, I'm gonna be sharing my 6 top lessons and how you can apply them in your business when you are looking and analyzing deals to decide if you should move forward or not. First lesson was when I got these properties, specifically one of them, is I overlooked the comparables, or what we call the after repair value of this property. Now, the thing you need to know is if a realtor is bringing you a lead, especially if it's on the MLS or even if it's private, you want to double check those comps. You don't want to just go with the comparables that specific realtor is sending you. Why? Because they have an agenda. Not every realtor, but most realtors have an agenda, and they only make money. They'll only make commission if you actually buy that property. So sometimes, and again, I've had many examples of this and many other investors that I've met, is sometimes a realtor will be more inclined to maybe send you higher looking comparables or higher comparables that have sold in the area just so that you may buy that property. And that was my mistake in this one particular deal where I didn't get a second look. I didn't get other realtors or maybe 1 or 2 other realtors to send me comparables to really compare and see if these numbers actually make sense. So when I bought this one specific deal, I was actually estimating my ARV, my comparable, my sale price of what I was going to sell in the market a lot higher than what it actually was. And that burned me. So if you're brand new, or even if you've been in the game for a while, you want to make sure that you take your time looking at the numbers, comparing apples to apples, not looking at comparables that were sold a year ago, but really looking at comparables that have recently sold, maybe 3 to 6 months max. And that's what I've applied in my business to help me better analyze the numbers that I'm looking at on these house flips. Lesson number 2 is take your time, not just viewing the property, which obviously you want to do, but the other properties surrounding the area. And what I mean by that is there was one of these deals that we bought, and for whatever reason, I didn't realize that there was a condominium that was right behind this property. And maybe I did, but I didn't realize it was going to be a big deal. I just thought, okay, well, there's other houses that obviously this condominium is right beside the neighboring properties, so it's not a big deal. But that was actually one of the challenges that I had selling this home. And people, the potential buyers, were saying, hey, look, I don't want these condo residents, these owners, overlooking my yard when I'm hanging out with my family or in privacy. So that was a huge challenge for us selling this home. I didn't just look at the property itself, but I didn't look at other properties. And not just this particular home, you want to look at your neighboring properties. Like, well, if this subject property looks good, but if your neighbor's property has a bunch of weeds, overgrowing grass, no one's taking care of it, well, guess what? When you're looking at selling this property, that's going to be a deterrent from a lot of buyers because they don't want to buy a property where the neighbors are not taking care of the property. It's a total mess. The backyard looks like a junkyard and there's a ton of stuff. And trust me, I've bought properties like that, or I've looked at properties where I look at not just the subject property now, I look at the neighboring property. So that's one thing you definitely want to do. You want to take your time and maybe even talk to the neighbors to see like, hey, how is this neighborhood? You know, how are the neighbors around here? But the most important thing is you want to look at the neighboring properties. And even if the property, whatever is behind it, like in my case, there was a condominium, and what's across the street? Is there commercial buildings? Is it on a busy street? These are all factors that you need to play, especially if you're looking at these comparables. You want to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples, not that your property, it doesn't have anything surrounding that may deter buyers, but other properties do. So again, you want to make sure that you look at the surrounding properties before you write an offer, or if you decide if you want to move forward with this property. Lesson number 3 was, at the end of the day, you don't want to do a deal if the numbers seem tight. Now, in previous videos, I've explained a quick formula that we used to analyze deals where I say I like buying properties at 60 cents on the dollar or less for a quick analysis. And what I mean by that is if you're looking at selling this home in your area for say $300,000, Well, I'm gonna take that $300,000 ARV after repair value and multiply it by 0.60. That'll give me $180,000. Quick analysis, I don't wanna be buying this property more than $180,000 if I'm using that formula. Now, for this one particular deal, we were at 70 cents on the dollar. And so what I thought to myself was like, hey, you know what? I could probably make this work. It's 70 cents on the dollars. The renovation still makes sense to me. And based on what the realtor told me, I can sell this property. But again, the numbers were just tight. But to me, when I looked at it on paper, I'm like, hey, I can still walk away with about $20,000 of profit after paying my lender back, after paying the commissions and all the costs associated with buying and holding that property. Well, guess what? I should have not moved forward with that property because those numbers, they were tight. There wasn't enough margin. And in this case, the market had shifted a little bit. And because my comparables, like in lesson one, they were a little bit too high, we ended up taking a bath. We actually ended up losing money because that margin, that 20K net profit shrunk and it actually decreased very, very quickly. As opposed to if I had looked at this property and my profit margin was, let's say, 50 to 75,000 or maybe 100 grand, which is what I do now, I would have had more margin for error. If the numbers seem too tight for you guys, they probably are. Walk away. There's always going to be another deal around the corner. Lesson number 4 is actually tied to lesson number 3, where sometimes you feel that you're in business, you're in real estate, and you just need to be working on something, right? You get restless, you just sold your last property, or you just bought your next rental, and you're looking at all your Facebook real estate friends or your social media friends that are in real estate, and you're like, wow, they're all doing deals, they're all buying apartments and all this stuff. And sometimes it can get in your head, and you just feel like you need to be working on something, and you buy a property, you maybe overlook the numbers, and maybe you don't do the proper due diligence as well as you should, and you get stuck with them crappy deal where you lose money. And again, it's happened to us a few times where we've learned it's better to be outside of the market wishing you were in than inside the market where you're buying a property and you're working on a deal wishing you were out because maybe you ran the numbers and you just didn't do the proper due diligence. You don't want to be rushing this business. You don't want to be rushing your numbers. You don't want to be just going with the first set of comparables that you get from a realtor. You don't want to just take the first quote you get from a contractor unless you trust them and you've worked with them many, many times before just to do a deal. You want to take your time. And again, I've seen this not just in my case, but with many other real estate investors that we worked with over the years. They get into the real estate market, they get into a deal, and maybe they overlook the numbers and they get burned, they lose money. And it's so easy to do in real estate when you're buying properties, especially if the numbers are a little bit too tight and the market's not in your favor. Maybe you're in just like right now, your interest rates have been rising over the last 18 months and there's a lot of changes happening. So you really need to be careful, especially if you're looking at comparables and getting more than one opinion of value. Lesson number 5 and 6, which you want to stay for in this video, are probably the most important things that you need to do, especially if you take away anything from this video. Lesson number 5 is where you need to have a reserve fund. And what I mean by that is, especially if you're doing 1 or 2 or 3 flips at a time like we've done in the past, is you want to have money set aside, your own money, not investor capital, your own money, where you have reserve funds in your corporation, in your business account, where if a deal does go sideways and you've borrowed $300,000 from an investor, you're paying 12% per annum, and let's say the deal goes sideways, you have money to pay that investor back. Reputation, like anything, is gold in this business. And these deals, even though we lost $168,000 on these few deals over the last 5 years, I paid every single cent back to those investors. And I'm so proud to say that was the case for me. But if I didn't have money in the bank from previous years of experience where I had stacked up money, I've been, saving up money and using some of this capital, I used to deploy it for my own deals, or I used to fund the renovations. If I didn't have that money, I would have not been able to pay these investors back. And if I wasn't be able to pay these investors back, God knows what would happen. Maybe they would have foreclosed on the property. Maybe they would have told their friends and family, don't do deals with Manjeet. Maybe they would have shared this stuff on social media, badmouthed us. You have no idea what can happen. And again, I've seen people lose money. And because we had those reserve funds, and because I looked at those numbers and made sure like, hey, if a deal did go sideways, I can actually pay these people back. That made me actually confident enough to move forward. If you don't have a reserve fund, that will take me to lesson number 6. Do one deal at a time. Especially if you are new, don't be trying to do multiple flips or multiple rentals where if you don't have a healthy reserve fund, you can just get pushed out of the game even before you're getting started. And again, there is nothing more valuable than reputation, right? Even in Proverbs, it says, value your reputation more than gold and silver. And that is so true for any business, especially real estate. So if you guys are in this business, make sure that you guys are running these numbers, especially if you're new. You want to make sure you have savings put aside or a rainy day fund when things happen. And this is the same case when you're even buying rental properties. If you have rental properties with yourself or with a JV partner, you want to make sure that you got a reserve fund. So if the furnace goes or the hot water tank goes, you're not going back to your investor asking for more money, which is never a good thing. Or worse yet, you're not going back into your loan or a line of credit or something else and you're borrowing to pay those things. You have a healthy balance of a reserve fund. So again, guys, thank you for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed these 6 lessons. And I'm going to be making more videos where I share even more things that I've taken away from other properties where I've learned and also where I've made mistakes and what I've done. Again, guys, if you found value from this video, consider subscribing to my channel, maybe even leaving me a comment what you've thought about this video. Maybe you've made some mistakes. You want to share those in the comments. I'd love to read those. And we'll see you guys all on the next video.